Somewhere in the hills of Appalachia, there's a garden that hasn't been touched in 15 years. No tilling, no fertilizing, no careful spring planting ritual. And yet, every single season, food appears. Greens push through the leaf litter. Onions rise from the frost. Root vegetables multiply silently underground, waiting to be dug when someone finally remembers they're there. This is not abandonment. This is design. The woman who planted that garden knew exactly what she was doing. She chose crops that didn't need her, plants that would outlive her attention, her energy, and possibly her memory. She planted them once, and they took over from there. This kind of gardening sounds impossible to the modern ear. We've been taught that vegetables are fragile things, dependent on weekly care, precise timing, and constant vigilance. But the old farmers knew different. They understood something we've quietly forgotten. The best crops are the ones that survive without you. And here's the part that matters. Most of these vegetables are still available. They're sitting in heirloom catalogs, growing in forgotten corners of old homesteads, and waiting in seed swaps for someone to recognize what they can do. What you're about to read is a list of 11 of them. Crops the old-timers planted once and harvested for decades. Plants that essentially grow themselves once you stop fighting the way nature actually works. By the end, you'll understand why this kind of knowledge is quietly coming back. Just as people start asking the same question our great-grandparents answered a long time ago. What if the garden could take care of itself? 1. Sorrel. The perennial lemon green that outlasts let us walk into any medieval monastery garden, and you'd find sorrel growing in the shade. Not because it was fashionable, but because it was reliable. The monks planted it once, and it returned every spring for 20 years. No reseeding, no fussing. Just a sharp, lemony green that appeared long before the lettuce was even thinkable. Sorrel tolerates shade, poor soil, and neglect. It doesn't bolt in heat like spinach. It doesn't rot in dampness like lettuce. It simply grows, dies back in winter, and rises again in spring with the reliability of a clock. Plant it once in a corner with decent drainage, and it becomes a permanent part of your garden. The old farmers loved it because it gave them vitamin C in early spring when the body was desperate for something fresh and green. Modern nutrition confirms what they already knew. Sorrel is loaded with antioxidants, vitamin C, and iron. The wisdom wasn't complicated. If a plant comes back on its own and feeds you in the hungry months, you keep it growing. 2. Good King Henry. The medieval asparagus that never quits. The name comes from old European folklore, and the plant earned it. Good King Henry was planted once and fed families for generations. In early spring, it sends up tender shoots that taste like asparagus. In summer, the leaves can be cooked like spinach. In fall, the seeds can be harvested and ground or sprouted. 1 plant, 3 harvests, 0 replanting. The peasants of the Middle Ages grew it because grain was scarce and land was limited. They needed crops that didn't demand constant attention. Good King Henry delivered. It tolerated partial shade, poor soil, and the kind of neglect that would kill most garden vegetables. The old farmers understood this. A crop that survives without you is worth 10 crops that depend on you. In a world increasingly worried about food security, that logic is starting to make sense again. 3. Jerusalem artichoke. The sunflower that feeds you underground. Not an artichoke, not from Jerusalem, just a North American native sunflower whose tubers fed indigenous peoples long before European settlers arrived. And when those settlers finally tasted them, they learned fast. Plant a handful of tubers once and you'll have them forever. They multiply underground all winter. They send up tall stalks with bright yellow flowers in late summer. And if you forget to dig them all up in fall, they'll come back even stronger the next year. In fact, the old farmers used to joke that Jerusalem artichoke was almost too generous. It spreads, it persists, it returns even when you think you've removed every last piece. In an era worried about supply chains and rising food costs, that kind of stubbornness is a gift. The tubers are rich in inulin, a natural prebiotic fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria. Modern nutritionists call it one of the most important things you can eat for long-term digestive health. The ancient diet, once again, turns out to be ahead of its time. 4. walking onions. The onion that plants itself across the garden. The name alone tells you everything. These onions grow tall, form small bulbs at the top of their stalks, and then bend down under their own weight until those bulbs touch the ground and root themselves. The plant literally walks across the garden year after year, planting itself wherever it lands. Old farmers used them for green onions in spring, small cooking bulbs in summer, and replanting stock in fall. All from the same patch they never had to seed again. They're nearly impossible to kill. Cold doesn't stop them, heat doesn't stop them, drought slows them down, but rarely finishes them off. A single row of walking onions, planted once, is essentially a living onion supply for the rest of your life. This is the kind of crop the old-timers built their gardens around, not the flashy ones, the faithful ones. 5. Lovage, the perennial celery that grows taller than you. Tall, fragrant, and tasting like a deeper, wilder version of celery, lovage was once a staple in every European kitchen garden. It was used in soups, stews, broths, and as a digestive aid. The leaves, stems, seeds, and roots were all used. Nothing was wasted. And here's the part the old farmers loved. A single lovage plant, well placed, can live for decades. It grows back stronger each year, reaching 6 or 7 feet tall in good soil. You plant it once, you harvest it forever. In an age when celery is shipped across continents in plastic bags and goes limp in the fridge after 3 days, the idea of a permanent celery-flavored plant in the corner of the yard sounds almost too practical to ignore. The old farmers kept lovage growing in the same spot for 30, sometimes 40 years. It wasn't sentimentality, it was common sense. 6. Hardneck garlic. The garlic that becomes part of the land. Not the soft, watery garlic of supermarket shelves. True, hardneck garlic. The kind grown in the hills of Eastern Europe and Central Asia for countless generations. Plant cloves in autumn. Leave them through the snow. They emerge in spring with a vigor that feels almost alive. Harvest in summer. Save the largest bulbs for replanting, and the strain adapts to your soil, your climate, your conditions. After a few seasons, the garlic essentially becomes part of the land. It learns where it lives. The old farmers understood this. They never bought garlic. They grew their own line, passed down through families, sometimes for 100 years or more. The garlic got tougher, hardier, and more reliable with every generation. Modern science confirms what every grandmother already knew. Garlic supports the immune system, the heart, and the body's defense against infection. The ancient remedy and the modern study agree. 7. Watercress. The green that thrives. Where nothing else will the Greeks called it food for soldiers and scholars, believing it sharpened the mind. It grows wild in clean streams, but it also grows beautifully in any damp corner of a garden, beside a leaky outdoor tap, in a shallow container kept moist, or near a downspout that never quite dries out. Plant it once near reliable moisture, and it spreads, reseeds, and returns year after year. It's one of the most nutrient-dense vegetables ever measured by modern nutritional science, ranking at the very top of leafy greens for vitamins and minerals per calorie. The old farmers gathered it from streams. The wise ones brought it home and let it root near the house, where it became a permanent crop they never had to think about again. In the modern garden, we fight to grow lettuce in perfect soil with perfect watering schedules. Meanwhile, watercress grows itself in the one damp corner we've been trying to fix for years. 8. Purslane. The weed that outperforms every green in your garden. Succulent, lemony, slightly salty, and one of the highest plant sources of omega-3 fatty acids on Earth. Ancient peoples from Persia to Mexico to the Mediterranean cultivated it deliberately. It self-seeds with such enthusiasm that one season of growth gives you years of return. It tolerates heat, drought, poor soil, and almost total neglect. In the dry summers when other greens collapse, purslane thrives. The old farmers ate it fresh, pickled it, and dried it for winter. Today, nutritionists list it among the most beneficial wild greens in the world. And the plant hasn't changed. Only our memory of it has. Most modern gardeners pull it out thinking it's a weed. The old farmers planted it on purpose and let it do what it does best: survive. 9. Fava beans. The bean that feeds you and feeds the soil. So ancient it appears in the records of nearly every early agricultural civilization. The Romans planted them by the field. The Egyptians stored them in tombs. Medieval European peasants relied on them as a winter staple. Plant them in autumn or early spring, and they not only feed you, they feed the soil. Fava beans pull nitrogen from the air and lock it into the ground, leaving the earth richer than they found it. Save a handful of dried beans each year, and you have your seed for the next planting. Forever. The old farmers understood the deep logic of a crop that improves the land while feeding the family. We're only now relearning what they always knew about soil health. 10. Multiplier onions. The onion that multiplies itself every year. Also called potato onions. Unlike regular onions grown from seed each year, these onions grow as a cluster of bulbs from a single planted bulb. You harvest most of them, save a few, replant them, and the cycle continues indefinitely. Some families in rural Europe and Appalachia have been growing the same line of multiplier onions for over 100 years, never once buying onion seed or sets. Think about that. A century of onions, all from a single original handful. This is the kind of crop the old farmers built their gardens around, not the flashy ones, the faithful ones, the ones that paid back the soil, the season, and the labor year after silent year. 11. Orach. The ancient spinach that self-seeds forever, also called mountain spinach. Grown in the gardens of ancient Greece, mentioned in Roman agricultural texts, painted on the walls of medieval herbals. It comes in shades of green, red, and deep purple. It self-seeds so generously that one planting produces a small forest of seedlings the following spring. It tolerates dry soil, salty soil, and poor soil. It grows tall and produces leaves all summer long, especially in the hot months when other greens fade. The old farmers loved orach because it asked for nothing, returned every year, and offered both food and beauty in the same plant. In a way, orach is the spirit of this entire list, a plant that doesn't need us but generously feeds us anyway. If you're thinking about which of these to start with, the old farmers would likely tell you to start small and start with what fits your land. In cool, damp regions, sorrel, watercress, lovage, and good King Henry will thrive. In hot summers, purslane, Jerusalem artichoke, and orach will reward you. In nearly any climate, walking onions, multiplier onions, garlic, and fava beans will find a way to belong. A small word of caution. Some of these plants, like Jerusalem artichoke and walking onions, can spread enthusiastically. Choose their location with that in mind. Others, like sorrel, contain natural compounds best enjoyed in moderation, the way the old cooks always did. Identify any new plant carefully before eating it, especially when foraging wild relatives. The old wisdom was never reckless. It was respectful. The land gives generously, but it asks for attention in return. We come back to the question hidden inside this whole list. Why did the old farmers refuse to stop growing these vegetables, even as the modern world filled with shortcuts and shipped-in produce? The answer, when you really listen for it, is simple. They weren't just growing food. They were growing certainty. They were growing the kind of independence that doesn't announce itself, but quietly carries a family through the years, through good seasons and bad ones, through cheap times and expensive ones, through stable years, and the kind of years no one can predict. If this list reminded you of something a grandparent used to grow, or sparked an idea for a corner of your own garden, share it in the comments below. Tell us which of these 11 vegetables you've grown, which ones you want to try, and which old varieties have been quietly passed down in your family. And if you find value in this kind of slow, grounded ancestral knowledge, consider subscribing so the next chapter of Forgotten Wisdom finds its way to you when it's ready. The seeds of the past are still alive. All they need is someone willing to plant them.